Welcome back, everyone. It's John Wade Boggs fan. Well, you know what I like to do when I'm doing an episode of Hobby Talk? I like to talk to John Mangini. Hey, John.
How are you, John? The two
Doing
John.
good, doing good. Yeah, yeah. Dual Johns here. First off, I want to congratulate you on 900 subscribers.
Thank you.
I'm sure you're well on your way to 1,000 now already, even though you just passed 900. But how long have you been on YouTube, like making
So
content?
I think it's been about 2 years. Originally, I just threw a couple videos on there almost as an afterthought, just because I had
Yeah,
recorded them for my Facebook page. So they were on there for a while before anything was noticed or anything like that. So I
yeah.
think it's been two
Did,
years.
did you ever imagine that you'd have that many people following? Just basically you just showing off some of the cards in your collection.
No,
I,
I had no idea there was a card community. I didn't know there was any
yeah,
such thing. Getting on YouTube and getting noticed, isn't easy. So I mean, when I threw them on there, I really didn't expect much. I just kind of did it for myself.
yeah,
It was funny. My first videos, I'd just grab a box and I'd sit on the floor, and you can even see my foot in the video. Like, I don't have any shoes on, and I'm just ripping them cards, and everybody's like, "Slow down,
down.
the cards." But honestly, I didn't think anybody was watching.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm floored. Obviously, I did a lot more. I knew there was a community, not maybe as wide as I now know it is, but so I did like watching channels, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I can do this. Just try it and stuff. And it's amazing. You get picked up or noticed by one or two channels, and then it just explodes. I'm just flabbergasted at I've been on for less than a year, and even the people I've met is just amazing. It's so much fun. I mean, I do a lot of videos, and it takes time, as you know, to do these. But I just enjoy it. Every once in a while, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I'll just throw a mail day in here, or what I'm going to talk about. But other than that, it's just turning the camera on and just talking. And I added a little trivia thing to mine. It's just mix it up a little bit. And some people enjoy guessing. And man, a lot of people. Some of those questions I throw out there, I'm like, I have no idea. Of course, I know the answers, but I'm like, I wouldn't know that. And people are like, oh yeah, it's so and so. I'm like, now they could have looked it up. I don't know. But it's just I noticed that no one else was sort of doing baseball trivia. It was all card related, obviously, but so I just added a little thing there. But so I loved your idea for your 900 subscriber video. Did you actually get like negative comments about your glove?
Yeah. I mean, some people, okay, they weren't all like negative.
Uh,
Some people were just
yeah,
questioning,
yeah,
like, why do you have a glove? And that's
yeah.
cool. I get it. But I got some hate comments like, what the hell you need that glove for? You're showing baseball cards.
Okay. I just think it's like
Like,
you
it's a
said, it
joke.
adds
It's tongue in cheek, man.
it adds a little panache. Now, if you were doing it with a Michael Jackson, bespeckled, glove or something like that, it just maybe a little bit over the top. But I mean, you have some pretty good card. I mean, just amazing. That extra, I don't know, fanciness or something. I mean,
Yeah.
I've thought like, yeah,
Yeah, I broke it out for a extra special card I always wanted to get. It was, I think the first time I broke it out was for my Walter Johnson Oxford Confectionery, which is a very rare regional set, and it shows him batting, which is really cool.
mm,
And I remember I broke it out for that because it was just such an extra special card for me. And then I broke it out. I got a Ned Williamson 1887 that was graded like a 7.5. It's either a 7 or 7.5. Just a beautiful copy of the card. And of course, Ned Williamson was like the first big home run hitter in the 1800s. it was Babe Ruth's record, single season home run record. I'm sorry, it was his single season home run record that Babe Ruth broke in
Broke.
1919. You
Yeah.
know, and so that was an extra special card of mine. And I said on my video, I have a tendency to pick my thumbs. I
Yeah.
have that habit. And man, I turned the camera around and I was showing some cards, and I was like, I had to delete it. I'm like, my thumb looks terrible. And so when I did a close up, I put the glove on, and they're like, why do you need one? Why do you need a glove to show baseball cards? I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, guys.
Well, I took that opportunity. I had always wanted to do, I'm not a controversial YouTuber and stuff, but I wanted to do some sort of parody. I wasn't quite sure what, but just, with all these, maybe the modern cards and all these, graded cards, and they're worth all this money and just all this stuff. And so I was like, okay, I had recently bought some of these, I think it was the 1990 Donruss variation borders. And are you still there? I don't know. I think I may have lost John here. Not sure what happened to the connection. Hopefully he's still on here. I think he may. Oh, he's gone. Hopefully he'll come back in and get reconnected. So this is a little bit interesting here for the first hobby talk of 2021. So that happens sometimes when you're recording there and you have some internet connection problems. So we'll see if hopefully we can get John back on here. But yeah, I was explaining I had a really good time doing John's video. I hope everyone got the purpose or the what I was going for. It was just a big joke about the junk wax cards and some of these minor insignificant errors and variations that I have as a player collector. It's those little things that you look for if you're a diehard player collector. So I think we have John back in here. Hey.
I don't know what happened.
There
Sorry
go.
about
Yes.
that. I don't know if it was me. Did you cut out?
No. Well, I don't know if I cut out. I think I'm still on. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about
So
that.
yeah, I was. No, that's hey. It happens. I just went with it and stuff. So yeah, I was explaining to you about your contest video. And I had wanted to do some sort of a parody again of just something. So I had got these 2 Boggs cards in the mail recently with a variation border from 1990 Donruss, just junk wax. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna
use that J word. I don't use that J word to talk about a baseball card.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have these gloves on. So what, like you said, you use the glove to show off like a really important card. So I'm going to show off some of these cards from the late 80s, early 90s, and just make a big production out of it. And just go over the top. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was a time where you couldn't find cards. And these are so rare. And So I think a lot of people like that commented got the what I was trying to get the message out and all that stuff. So that was a fun video response to do. So
yeah. I don't. When you were talking about when you started on YouTube, I don't know if you remember, but you reached out to me before you did a video. I don't know if you remember that, but you sent a note, I think, through my Facebook page, and you said I'm thinking about getting into it, and then you sent me your first video link when you first did it, and you said, I don't think I'm any good or whatever. Can you take a look and give me any advice? And
yeah,
I don't know if you remember that.
That's right, because I think I found you on Facebook.
Yeah,
I think that must have been, or
Yeah.
either that, or because you were maybe one of the first early channels that I watched. Mike Baseball Collector was another one that I got a sense of what everyone was doing with videos. And I think because you are in different groups, Facebook groups that I'm in as well. And so I do remember now that you bring it up. I don't know, I think, have you frozen up again, John? Are you there? I think we lost John again. We're having some bad connections for some reason. I'm not sure if it's on my end or his end, or just the internet in general. There we go.
I don't know what's going
So,
on. I mean, I have full signal, so I don't know.
yeah, and I'm not sure if it's, I don't know how this works, whether it's StreamYard, whether it's my connection. I mean, I have a pretty strong connection as well, but
Yeah, I
that's
just
fine.
went out
Well,
and checked and made
yeah.
sure nobody else was streaming that was kicking me off or something.
Well, I don't want to blame my wife, but sometimes she gets on and plays poker and stuff. But so she's either doing that or doing a puzzle, which doesn't take up anything. So I don't think it's on mine, but we'll see. So something else I wanted to just pick your brain on is, so I've started to get into, you've been collecting vintage for pretty much all your collecting life, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
been your primary focus. You're getting a little bit into modern. I've seen some new stuff that you've been picking up. But so I've started, I think it was like May of last year. I've focused on picking up some vintage cards. So it's primarily from 1980 back to, my range is maybe 1948, so somewhere, in there. And so it was like, okay, where do I start? What do I like focus on and stuff? And so 78 was one of my favorite all-time sets. That's when I first packs I started buying. So I started going by year, and I worked on 78s and 79s and some 80s, 77s, that type of thing. And I started hitting some brick walls. So now I'm like opening it up, and the focus, there's just so much out there. How do you, with because you have a wide range of stuff, do you look for particular sets that you're aware of and that you may be missing a couple players, or do you like look for a particular player that you want to go after, or what's your thought process?
That's a good question. I kind of get into different moods, right? I used to chase down the sets. I might need two for my 78 set, three for my 79 set. I'll get on a kick where I'll just be like, okay, it's time to finally complete those, and I'll go try to find those cards. And then I get these kicks because I have like pretty much a started set for like from the 1887 on.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like I'll get on a card. Like I found these. Just for an example, I found this rare 1926 Spalding set, right? So I find the Babe Ruth, and these
Okay,
cards are rare. They weren't discovered until like there was one find in 1990, and there was another find I think in '96, and before that they were virtually unknown of. And so I was able to pick up a coupon with it. So of course now I have this, so I want to get other cards. So that leads me to starting, starting to put together at least the baseball players from.
I think we lost John yet again, um, showing off some of his really good cards here. So we'll see. Hopefully he'll pop back in again. Give it a couple minutes for him to make the connection again. So yeah, it's been a struggle for me to just try to focus on what I want to do with my vintage collection. I've done a couple videos on it as well. just, I don't know. There's just so many good cards out there. Hall of Famers, even non-Hall of Famers. Okay, so yeah, John has left. Hopefully he'll make the reconnection and come back in. So, yeah, I had my eye on one particular card and sort of moved away from that one and thinking of something else right now. It's sort of not quite a big boy card, but something I would love to own. So I'm hoping to see something comes up on eBay at a relatively decent price. So hopefully John's just reconnecting again here. I don't see a message from him saying that he can't get back on. So hopefully he'll get back on here soon. He may be switching things over to his phone here. There we go.
I have no idea what's going on. He's getting picked up. You mentioned 1948 was the card you got. You went back that far. I don't know if you're familiar, but these cards here are the 1948 Topps Magic Photos. And they were the first set Topps ever issued. Everybody, it's the, well, not everybody, but a lot of people, first issue.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen you showing off some of those. Yeah.
Other subjects. Yeah.
So okay, so you sort of get into your different moods of maybe either completing sets or going after a certain set or certain players and stuff like that. I'm still relatively new, so I don't know. I guess my first mood was working on the 78 set. That's where I started off. And it's not. I do have a side thing of trying to do a complete hand set of 78. But other than that, it's just picking up some vintage Hall of Famers and stuff like that. Because I can't go after everything, just like all of us can't go after everything, even though we wish we could.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you saw my last video where I sort of did a little rant on just all these prices that it's frustrating when I do identify a card, and I had my sights set on the 75 Brett rookie, and I wanted to pick that up I couldn't afford an 8, so I was going to look for a 7, and it's, I don't know, I look at the even fairly recent prices, and things are just going up, and you don't see too many of them listed. And the last couple sales went around 300, and like literally right before that, a month or two, they were selling for like 260, 270 maybe, and I was willing to go like 275, 280 or something like that, and it just went up to like 300. And since those two sales, I haven't seen another one listed. But I found another card. I don't want to say what it, but if I can find it, and it's going to be a lower grade, but if I can find a well-centered copy, I don't care about the corners. It's a gorgeous card. It has, and I'm not in it for the investment. Some of these cards are going to, die. Well, not die with me, but you're going to be handed down to my son, hopefully. And so I have no intention of selling. But I guess it's nice to know that if you're going to put a decent amount of money into cards, that at least it's going to hold its value. And for most of this vintage stuff, it will.
That's right. I mean, if you're going to shell out the money, you want to know that if you get into a bind or a pinch, or you'll get your money out of it or something out of it.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, so I have my eye on this one, and it's a it's a gorgeous card. It's one of those ones that it's a Hall of Famer, and it's one of those ones that you can just look at and just enjoy, and that's what I want to collect as well. Occasionally, save up, go after some of those larger cards, some of those don't want to use the word iconic, but ones that when you see it, everyone goes, "Oh yeah, oh you have one of those," and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I have
Yeah, there are a
I'm
lot of
that way with
collectors.
my yeah. Good. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say there's a lot of collectors that only collect those iconic cards, and I'm one of those collectors. I have a lot of those iconic cards, but I like something more rare, like this, more exciting to me than one you see every day. I
Yeah.
like to collect the obscure cards and the rare cards of players that had some place in baseball history. They could be great players, or some of them were just really good players that maybe not a lot of people know about. And I wanted to go back to your original question about how I collect and this and that. So because where I am in my collection now, and because of the outrageous prices, I'm kind of an opportunist, right?
Hmm.
Like there's all kind of cards I want for my sets, and there's some obscure rare Clementes I want, and some other sets, and so I go for opportunity. What I can get at a good price, a good copy at a good price. Like I kind of save my spending money for that, right? Because I
Hmm.
want to be able to pounce when I find something that's just so undervalued.
Yeah.
Like I picked up, and I never had one of these before, but it's a rare, like 1959 Yoo-Hoo card. I'll be showing it. So
Yeah. I
most,
think.
like
Oh, there we go.
uh, you might be able to find it for like 70. And so I found one that was going for far, 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 far less with an opening bid, and nobody bid. So it's not that
Wow.
I was dying to have that card. It was just so cheap. It was a set I had to, and they're pretty rare. I had to put a bid in at that low price, and I won
Yeah.
it. And I
Yeah.
do that all the time because the more that people shell out $1,000 for a Donruss basketball cards for 2021,
Yeah.
that's $1,000 they don't have to spend on other stuff, right?
Yep.
And that seems to be what's so popular now. It's the iconic cards, and it's these new boxes, and some of the new players. There's a lot of prospecting going on. So in many ways, these old vintage sets are being neglected. And,
Yeah.
I can't have baseball cards neglected. I got to go take care of them. If I could pick these
Yeah.
rare cards up for 20 or 30 bucks, I'm going to do it all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm that way with my Boggs collection in terms of finding some of those obscure cards. There's these food issues or these MSAs or just various oddball stuff that again, unless you're a Boggs collector, you don't really care. So I am going against other Boggs collectors for some of these things. But I've picked up some quirky little stuff for Boggs, so I follow what you're saying about some of the vintage cards that you're going after. All right, let's can get back in here. Oh, all right. Hey, there we go.
I don't know what's going on because I have gone live so many times. And I work from home. I am on Teams calls all day, and I never once get
Yeah,
dropped. And we're trying to do this, and now we're getting
yeah.
dropped.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually I'm actually texting my wife to no, she's not playing poker, so she's not online. So I'm not sure if it's on. I don't think it's on my end. But who knows? It could be just that StreamYard or something that's having issues. But at any rate, we'll keep plugging along here. The other thing I'm really organized when it comes to my Boggs cards. I have that card catalog back there. My other stuff, not so much. How do you organize your? I mean, do you do it by year, by player, by set, or like is it is it all over the place or?
No, I'm actually very organized. Um, I'll tell you, I so and I'm just stupid for this, but in the earlier days of computers, I spent several weeks and I cataloged every single card I had. Right, I had gotten a hold of this program. I think it was Card Collector, and
Okay, yeah, yep,
you could print out lists, and it would tell you which number of cards you need for each set. You could keep value if you want. You could put a picture of the card if you wanted. And I spent weeks every night after work, every night for hours on end, and I logged every single card. And that computer crashed, and I didn't have a backup of it, and
oh man,
everything. And I got so frustrated. I did not want to have to go recatalog everything again. I mean,
yeah,
it was my big project. You know, it was like my baby. So anyway, my cards are very organized. I organize by set, right? And then if I have certain decades or periods where, I don't have a near set, but I have 10 from this year and 10 from that year, then I'll kind of lump them together like 1930s and 1940s, something like that.
okay,
I have enough 1930s cards to fill box, but
yeah,
so if I have a lot of cards, then it gets its own box, and I use the white vault boxes.
okay,
You know what I'm talking about. So I use these vault boxes,
okay,
and you could get them graded or not. And then what I do is I keep a bunch of pencils around, and I'll write
yeah,
on pencil. And then if I get too many of the set, and I have to go to a shoebox out of here and put them in the shoebox, erase. So I've had some of these boxes for over a decade. Some
yeah.
probably longer than that. And that's what I do. And surprisingly, even though I have 100,000 plus cards, I can find a card pretty much within 3 minutes. Just
Yeah.
because, I mean, the one thing I struggle with is they could be in better order. But I'm kind of a visual person, which is probably why I collect cards to begin with.
Yeah.
And I kind of know by looking where what is. And I have them in multiple rooms, multiple places. Um, and so that's how I do it.
Yeah. I'm the same way with my non-bog stuff. It's just in different boxes, but I'm like, okay, now I remember it was, I think it was in this box, and I remember like this row or something like that, and I'll go, but like you, with my program, there was a time where I had every single card cataloged. But it just got to be so much that I probably have 10,000 cards now, non-bogs cards, but about 10,000 cards that are not in my software. But a lot of them are like commons and different things like that. So it's not, I don't worry too much about it. But yeah, I'll go through a box of cards. And I'm like, oh, I should get this into my software.
Yeah.
And it's now I keep my bog stuff pretty up to date because I have a whole system for that to know what I have, what I'm missing with checklists and stuff like that. But my other stuff,
Yeah, the
not
thing
so
is,
much.
if you get into the where it becomes a job, right? Like you're getting all this mail and you have to catalog everything and it sits there for weeks because you can't get to it. You're busy at work or whatever. I have a job. This is my
Yeah.
hobby. And so
Yep.
I want it to be organized. I want to be able to find whatever I want to find whenever. There's certain sets that if I'm working on, yeah, I want to sit down and put them together and find out what numbers I'm missing. But beyond that, I want to make sure that it's not a chore for me every day. That it is, something that I can enjoy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And part of
Yeah,
part of the
because that
raw,
yeah that is
and I think this is why I love raw cards. I love the curator part of it. Like I could be, like if I had a museum of my cards, I'm one of those people. I could sit in the basement and just curate it and find nicer
yeah,
ways to display it and holders. Like if I could show this around, like
yeah,
just different displays. Um, I have all kind of stuff. I don't know how well that's going to come across, but
Yeah, no, no, no.
I
Yeah, I
really,
can
I
see it.
really
Yeah.
like that, finding the perfect holder for it, and making it look nice and display and everything.
Yeah, this took the what you see behind me here. When I set everything up in the Boggs room, I mean, it was I would take measurements, so I had everything framed up, and I literally took okay, how much do I have? How many inches do I have in this wall, and divided it up in spacing and stuff. It took me weeks to figure out one where okay, because I wanted it to all look uniform and stuff. It's just I had to have things all evened out, and there's some pattern to it, even though it looks somewhat random. And
I did the
yeah,
opposite.
it's a lot of time. Yeah,
Yeah, I did the opposite. It took me weeks too, but I just started putting stuff somewhere I thought they would look nice, and then I just kind of kept building around it, find
yeah,
different displays, and after a while, it gets to the point where, and I think this is important for anybody who has a card room or a sports room, at least it is for me, is you get to the point where it becomes like nothing special because you're so used to seeing the same stuff on the walls. And so you
hmm
have this great stuff that you love, but now you don't even notice it because it's just like, it's there too long. And so what I'll do every
yeah,
once in a while is I'll totally change I'll change out cards and change out things and put new stuff up. And then
yeah,
I kind of get excited for my room again because it's like I got, a new room. But
yeah.
that's, go
I
ahead. Go
can
ahead.
totally relate to that because for my work, I've been basically working from home since the middle of March with COVID. I've been, remote, and this is my office. So this is my YouTube studio, but it's also I have a different computer set up for work. So I'm in this room every day for like 8 hours. And you're right. I mean, every once in a while I pause and like, oh yeah, yeah, I have like. I mean, it's
Right.
I can definitely relate because it's now like yeah, it's the Boggs room and all this stuff. What's going to be fun for me is crossing my fingers that my wife and I hopefully will be in a position to build. We want to build a house, and maybe not this year, maybe next year, hopefully. And I've already got the permission to have a basement all to myself.
There
In
you go.
fact, she wants it down there because she can just shut me down there and just say you stay in the basement, which is that's fine with me. But I'm going to have potentially like two times, three times this amount of space, and it's going to be nice to figure out. Okay, how do I? And so it's going to be more spread out. It's just not going to be overwhelming, and I think that may help with it being a bit fresher and stuff. But we'll see.
Well, you'll have to buy a
But
bunch more
yeah,
stuff.
well, that's I have no more room right now on the walls, and so I'll occasionally buy this or that or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I have nowhere to put it. My wife's like, well, then you can stop buying, right? I'm like, no, I'm buying. I'm buying for the future house. It'll stay in its a sleeve or poster holder and all that stuff. It'll have its day, and
Right.
yeah. So I who knows? By the time we actually have the house built and stuff, I may have acquired enough to fill the basement, but probably not. But I'm actually hoping this is all Boggs. I have other non-Boggs stuff, not a whole lot, but I'm going to have an area hopefully that will I'll be able to show off some other general baseball memorabilia, which will be cool. So, all right, let's see if he can get back on here. May just have to wait a minute for him to log back in. Yep, not sure if this is something happening with StreamYard or what, but yeah, the previous ones I've done haven't had an issue with them, so we'll see. Oh, we got another connection here. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
I don't know what's going on. I honestly, my internet shows
uh,
that it's up, and
yeah.
I don't. It must be all the maybe it's all the political people like going at each other's throats on YouTube right now.
Maybe. Yeah. So now, are you planning on going to the national in July?
I don't have anything booked, but I yes, if it's happening, I will get there one way or another. I don't know
Good.
how it
Yeah,
works.
I have.
I've never been to a national, and I was planning to go to my first one in 2020, and then of course you know what happened. So I ended up
Yeah.
not getting to go. I've
Oh, so
never
you
been to one.
haven't been? Wow.
You know
This
why I haven't
would.
been to one? Because I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death to go on what I might spend. I mean, I've actually been scared to death. Like I'm gonna go, I'm gonna see 5,000 things that I love and want, and I'll probably, you know, be out of money the first hour.
First, yeah, I want one of those. What? Oh shoot! Yeah, it is. It is overwhelming, but in a good way. And I've only been to two, so this would be my third. And fellow Boggs collector, he lives south of Chicago, so I'm not worried about a hotel room like right near the convention because I'm going to be staying near him, and it's maybe about a 40-minute drive into the convention center. So again, I can do a last minute thing if wait to find out if they're having it or not. But I'm looking forward to it this year, not just to look at all the cards, but just to meet fellow YouTubers and stuff.
Yeah.
So that I think is going to be probably even better because I'm going to have some money saved, but I'm not going to be able to go crazy on anything. I don't have right now. I don't have any wish list of I want to find this one card. I did the first time back in 2015 was my first year. And I had a couple of, I want to find one of this card, one of this card, one of this card, and I was able to find what I wanted, and one of them was my 54 Topps Ted Williams.
Oh, nice.
That one and my T206 Christy Mathewson with the dark cap. Those two I wanted to pick up, and I figured I'd be able to find them, and I found copies that, again, for price I was willing to pay. In fact, I got what I thought were good deals for them. I waited on that Ted Williams till the Sunday afternoon, and it didn't sell. It didn't sell. It didn't sell. And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna wait, and if it sells, it's not meant to be. But if not, I'm gonna go after it. And I had cash, so it was like, what's your best cash offer? And they said this, and I'm like, I was trying not to say like. Yes, probably, yeah, that I could do that. I'm like, I got, and so I waited to the very end, and yeah, you can maybe get if there's stuff that hangs around, you may be able to get a decent deal on
Yeah,
it. But
you hit on something because I wouldn't go to the national. That was my buying time, right after the national and kind of during the national. I would that's when I would find my best deals on eBay because there are far less shoppers because all the big buyers are at the national, right? And then right
yeah,
after the national, there are a lot of dealers who have to dump stuff, and they built up their inventory for the show, and now it's over, and they were stuck with all kind of stuff they didn't move. And you
yeah,
will find some great deals. And not only that, even if they weren't at the show, even not for that reason, all the big collectors blew all their money at the
yeah,
national. So
yeah,
they're not
yep,
buying that week afterwards, right? They just went and spent all their money. So
yeah.
there are deals to be had if you're sitting at home on eBay during and right after the national. No, hands down. I've seen it year in and year out.
You know what? I didn't even. It just didn't cross my mind, but that makes perfect sense.
And you get lots. Like
Yeah,
sometimes I got a lot of the what is it 62, 63 stamps. Oh, SGC graded. I got a whole box of them for like $70. Sandy Koufax, Duke Snyder. Like this guy must have had loaded up and just wanted to get rid of them.
yeah,
And there were many doubles. So what I did is I sold off the doubles. my bats just fell over. I sold off the doubles and actually, got my money back. So I got all those for
Nice.
free. Well, I'll tell you what, if it's not internet connection, now my bats are
It's
falling off. So I have to tell you, I installed a camera in this room. So
okay.
anytime anybody walks in this room, I get notified, and it takes a
Mm-hmm.
video. And so I was working up in Maryland, and I'm in South Carolina. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I first installed it, I get this motion detector, and it starts filming. So then I get another one, and I get like several in a row. So I'm up there with my coworkers, and it's pitch black here, right? It's like in the winter, it's pitch black here. My room has black curtains, no windows that
Mm-hmm.
you can see in, and the door's closed, right?
Yeah.
So what is setting off this motion detector? So I look, and I have this. That's what I was saving from
Yeah.
my bats. I have this Hack Wilson press photo. It's an old press photo,
Yeah.
and it was sitting on my floor over here.
All right.
And I'm watching the videos, and I'm like, "There's nothing going on." And all of a sudden, these little balls that look like baseballs start flying through the air like this. It was the craziest thing. And I had just gotten that press photo, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, I think that press photo is haunted. Like whoever had it, or maybe it's Hack Wilson and all the old vintage guys playing baseball in here at
Yeah.
night when I'm not around. It was just the craziest thing. So I got like 3 or 4 of these videos in a row. It started to be a thing. And
Yeah.
the third one freaked me out because it had a big flash of light, right? My video camera does not have light. It has no light. And it actually made a sound like a shutter, like a camera being
Yeah.
taken. Weirdest thing.
Wow. And so you never figured out what it was.
I didn't. Everybody wants to tell me that it's probably bugs or lint. But the thing is they were going like from one area
To
just up
another.
and disappear, like one after the other. And it looked, honest to God, it looked like a baseball flying up through the air.
Yeah.
They were these little white dots. And so I don't know, maybe they were bugs, maybe they weren't. And then the one, I had all these things going like this. But I mean, I don't see any in here. Never have.
Yeah.
Little tiny gnats.
I
I
mean,
can't
the only
see.
thing I can think of with like a flash would be like a lightning bug or something that um but boy,
The
that
whole
is
screen went white. It was just like a whiteout and like a big flash like that.
but yet
Very
the camera doesn't have a light to it.
No, it doesn't have a flash or a light. It's just an infrared camera that captures, in
Yeah.
the dark. There's no light
Yeah.
to it whatsoever. In fact, if my
That is
lights are out and
weird.
it films, like something trips and it's black in here, all you could see is black. There's no, it's just no light. So how can there be a flash?
Yeah. That is strange.
I know. I was freaking out
Just
there for a while. When I first saw it,
wow.
I was really freaking out. And I'm showing
And
it to everybody.
yeah,
Trying
but
to
it hasn't happened since.
No, but I mean, honestly, no, it hasn't. It hasn't.
Yeah.
I'm up here all the time. Like, unlike you, I work, but I work down the hall. This is
Yeah.
just my card room. So when I'm working and I'm stressed out, I'm on conference calls, I'll routinely walk in here and I'll be talking and I'll be like looking through cards while I'm on speakerphone or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
when I'm just listening. And when I get stressed out, I'll just come in here and sit down for a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it hasn't happened again.
Yeah. Wow. That's weird. Yet to get back to the national, and like you said, so much eye candy, so to speak, of what there is there. I think it was in 2019 was the last one I went to, and there was a guy that had a T206 Honus Wagner, and I think it was a PSA 2, I want to believe. And I just saw it in the case, and I'm like, wow, that you know. And he goes, yeah. And he said, and I actually asked him. I said, can I hold it? And he's like, yeah. So he goes into the case, and you know, so I'm holding. Of course, I took a picture. I'm like, I'm actually holding the the Honus Wagner, and I flip it over, and I forget how much he wanted. For, was it 600,000 or 750, something around there?
That sounds
And
about right for that time. It's
I
more
yeah,
now.
and yeah, and I think I found out that right at the end of the show, he actually sold it to someone because there
Wow.
was a certain something, and yeah, the rumor was around like, hey, yeah, he actually someone bought it.
That's definitely my dream card. I would sell that Mantle
Yeah,
9 in a heartbeat to buy that card in a lesser
yeah,
grade. That's definitely been my dream card.
yeah. Well, yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to ask you is like, do you have like what you know maybe not money aside. Like, okay, well, if I had unlimited funds, yeah, I'd get a T206 and this and whatever. But within your collecting ability right now, do you have a card that is sort of like, you know what, this is one card that I've seen one or that I would really want to add to my collection.
Yeah, there's a handful. The ones, and I still haven't scratched these off, but of course the 68 3D Clemente tops test, the 1933 DeLong Gum Lou Gehrig,
Yeah. Yep.
the 1938 Gaudi Joe DiMaggio is just one that seems to have eluded me. I don't know
Hmm.
why. Um, and a Big Ed Delahanty from the 1800s.
Okay.
Just about any one of them would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
Ed
Those are some nice
doesn't
ones.
have very many cards, and he was just one of the absolute best early players. You know,
Yeah.
probably he and Cap Anson were the two top players of that day.
Yeah. I'd say if I had two on my list, and again, now these are probably even in ones right now with my situation, I have to do a lot of saving up. But again, it's within reason. Would be a fairly clean copy of a 52 or 54 tops Hank Aaron rookie, and just for the tremendous eye appeal, and I can't remember which Gaudi year it is, but it's the Lou Gehrig portrait with the yellow background.
The 30,
Is it the
the portrait
third?
34.
Yeah, yeah, 34.
Yeah, the Lou Gehrig
Not
first card.
yeah, not the one with him batting and such,
Yeah,
just
there's
the
he
headshot.
has two
It's
in that set. Yes, one with him batting and the portrait. They're both. If I had to pick between those two, like I'm one of those people. I don't know how I could because I like them both so much.
yeah,
Excuse me. I actually like the batting pose. I tend to like the action poses more than the portraits myself.
yeah,
I actually started to like portraits a little better recently. You know, with like the T206 Walter Johnson. Growing up, and for even when I was an adult, I always chased after the more action shots for the
hmm,
T206 or any of the other ones. So I didn't really buy a lot of the portrait cards. And I
yeah,
remember years ago, I couldn't believe how popular that Walter Johnson portrait was, because I wasn't into portraits, but
yeah,
I get it now. I want to collect them as a baseball player. I don't want to have their. I always joke around. I don't want to have their picture in my wallet like I'm dating them. And
yeah,
that's what
right,
I do with
yeah,
the portraits. It's like I liked him as a baseball player. I don't necessarily need a portrait of him, in street clothes. Um,
right,
uh, but some of those cards are just gorgeous. That T206 Walter Johnson's beautiful, and
yeah,
the 19, what is it, 10 or 11, 10, I think, Sporting Life cards. Those are all portraits, and there's some
yeah,
nice in there too. I
yeah,
have a bunch of those. I get on these kicks where I'll start to, like the 34 to 36 diamond stars. Next thing you know, I have a whole bunch of them in
yeah,
a wrapper, And then the 48, 49 lathe. I get a bunch of those all of a sudden. I didn't have any. I get on these
Yeah.
kicks, and but that's what's fun. I think if you're on a budget, it's fun to just when you get to such a point in your collection where you have so many different sets represented, and most of the big rookie cards, from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and all that. It's fun to just be an opportunist, and with especially with the prices the way they are right now. And that's what I do. And if I went to the national, or if I do go to the national, that's probably the approach I'd take too.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the place I try to get my dream car. I just don't feel like I'd get the best deal there.
Yeah, that's the other thing is
Maybe
I don't know. Yeah. Well, it will be interesting to see whether people are willing to deal or haggle, or whether you just look in case after case after case and it's just overpriced. I don't know. It'll be interesting. But I think one of the last ones that I just love, and you've shown it off in your videos multiple times. And again, I don't know what they go for. I'm sure again I'd only be able to afford maybe like a 1 after saving up for a while. Is that horizontal Christy Mathewson? Is it the the shoot? I forget which set it's from.
Hold on, I'll get it for you. You want to get
it? Yeah, I want to see it.
Get out my. Let me put these back in. Get out my handy dandy vault box.
Yeah.
Let's see what we have here. Now, they made this in, I believe, 2 versions.
Oh, okay.
I'll show all the cards in here until I get to it. How about that?
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Eddie Plank. Here's a Christy Mathewson.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice one.
Chief Bender. Chief Myers.
Now, are those like... Are those T20 somethings or?
This is the E101.
Okay, yeah.
I'm trying to think. Is it Dockman Sons? I think it might be Dockman Sons. A lot of the times they use the same image on different products, and so the card looks the same until you flip it over on the back.
The back's different, yeah.
Yeah.
But that is just.
I also have in this one, and it's one of my favorites. It's such a cool looking card too. Is the Honus Wagner.
Oh, I mean, they're many works of art. I mean, in my mind, I mean, it's
one of my favorites. I tell everybody, it's subjective. We all have our opinions, but I always thought this was the prettiest card ever made.
Yeah.
Of a big player. I've seen some really cool looking tobacco cards and candy cards of players I'd never heard of, but of a big player, this is the prettiest card in my opinion.
And I have like I said, I only have one Christy Mathewson. It's that dark cap, but there's one of the reasons why I have a little bit of an interest in Christy Mathewson is where I live in central Pennsylvania. He went to Bucknell University, which is 10-minute drive from where I live. I work in Lewisburg, which is where Bucknell University is. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Christy Mathewson is buried in the Lewisburg Cemetery. I think.
I didn't even know that whenever I showed you this one.
Yeah.
From 48.
And so I've always been interested. I'm not obsessed, and I haven't, obviously I only have one card and stuff, but that dark cap T206 is just, again, I look at it, it's just a gorgeous card, and of course it's one of the greatest pictures of all time. And but yeah, there's that sort of local connection as well to Christie. So
that dark cap Christie was, I think, the second Christie I ever got. I had an opportunity to get pretty cheaply too back in around 1990, the T205 Mathewson, and so I have that one. That's a beauty.
Yeah.
And the Mark Kaplan, I think, was the second one I picked up years and years ago.
Now, I think that one's more common than the white cap.
I think so.
I think.
I don't
I just
follow.
don't.
As much as I'm into cards and as knowledgeable as I am, and all the different sets I have represented, the T206s I'm not that educated on. I guess mostly because I really don't care about the backs too much. And if
Yeah.
you're a T206 collector, most T206 collectors are in it for the backs and the different, the rare backs and so forth. And that just never really, I don't like to turn my cards around too often. So I like to look at the fronts or display them.
Yeah.
And so I don't get to enjoy the backs. And it's just never been something I'm into, even if it's a rare back. It's cool to own. And I do understand why people get into it. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying it's something I haven't been into.
Well, that's why in at the 2019 show, I wanted to pick up another decent T206. So I was looking around, and within what I had to spend, and I came across this Mordecai Three Finger Brown. And the Chicago, it had Chicago going straight down, and the I think it was a yellow background. Gorgeous card, and I go up to this table, and it's a PSA 1. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, centered, sharp corner, and I'm thinking to myself, why is this a PSA 1? And it was for a really decent price. And he says, oh, well, the reason being, and he flipped it over, and there was a little bit of paper loss right at the top of, I think it was a sweet caparol. So right at like the top border, some of it's missing. You still see sweet caparol and stuff. I'm like, that doesn't bother me, because I'm looking at the front, and because there's not even any stats on the back. All right.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm looking at it and going, I have one PSA 1 of that Three Finger Brown card, and so
I would buy that card all day long, because especially if it doesn't take any of the writing off. A lot of times, the 1.5. Sometimes they were glued into an album. Like, you could find a lot of like the old Allen and Ginter cards, or some of the cards from the 1800s like that, where they were glued into a book. But most of the time when they come out, they might have a little bit of residue, but there's no paper loss. And I have a Charles Comiskey like that. But what happens is the front is pristine, because it has been kept in that book all those years. So this thing on the outside looks like an 8, and on the back it has a little bit of residue that really doesn't take away from the look even of the back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like there's paper torn off of it or anything like that. And of course, it's going to get a 1 or a 1.5.
Yep.
But you mentioned Three Finger Brown. Let me show you something. I don't know if you happen to see this, but let me get it for you. I was very excited to get this. This is from the Black Swamp Find.
Oh.
Are you familiar with that?
Wow. Yes. Like, they were all like PSA or SGC, like 7s, 8s, 9s. It was.
Yeah, and there were even a few 10s.
Wow.
But that's the Three Finger Brown from that find. They found multiple cards of just about every player.
Now, what set is that? That's not a.
This is the can't always remember these off the top of my head. E98.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember the E number, or the W's. I can't always remember them off the top of my head. There are so many different ones, and many of them are very similar.
Yeah, like you said, maybe just the back, or just it's very like you said, very similar fronts. And okay, is that the checklist or?
Yeah. I actually like the advertising on the back. Kind of cool. Like the Sporting Life cards I mentioned earlier have little ads on the back for different magazines that they publish. Most of them are Sporting Life, but I think there are some rarer ones that feature, other ones.
Yeah. Something else I was curious about, and I think you've mentioned this before in some of your videos, but I think we're maybe roughly the same age. And but I think you said when you first started collecting, almost immediately you were interested in vintage when your friends were more into the current players and stuff.
Yeah.
What made you or what gave you the interest of like immediately looking at what's now it's all vintage, but like going back further, and I guess even back in the day, 10 years, cards 10, 20, 30 years older were considered probably vintage back then. But what gave you that interest of like right off the bat being interested in older cards?
I can't remember. I don't know if it was the cards themselves. I was always a fan of the game, and I played baseball from the time I can remember. When I was a little kid, we had, before Little League, there was this league called the Itty Bitty League.
Okay.
And there were only a couple good players who would come out of there every year. And if you were the best little itty bitty player, you played shortstop on the team. So I played
Okay.
shortstop on my team. And there was another good player, and he played shortstop on his team. And then we were the two high recruits for Little League, right? So, I'm talking, I was 5. I think I played from, it might have even been 4. And I just loved baseball. And I remember going to a store, and my mom, took me to a convenience store. Back then, everything wasn't a chain. You actually had real, like, mom and pop stores, and we had one in town, and it was in Youngwood, Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up, which is where George Blair's from. And in fact, I used to play golf with his brother all the time. So anyway, I go in there, and I remember my mom handed me a pack of cards, and they were 1973 cards. And I was young. She tells everybody that she started buying me cards too. So I was young. And I don't even know if I kept those cards. I'm sure I did. But that was the first pack I ever remember getting. I have no idea who I got. And my mom always says that I would sit there and I'd just look at these cards, on the floor for it. And I was an only child, right? And so it gave me something to do because I grew up in the country. I had some friends, but I spent my time alone in my room mostly with my cards. In fact, I remember my parents were moving, and I had a very small room. My parents had a very small house. I had a very small room, and the whole thing was covered with all these old baseball cards, Clemente Mays and everything. And my mom they were showing the house, and the realtor called my parents, and they didn't want to buy the house, but they wanted to put an offer in on my cards.
That's right. I think for me, for the most part, I've collected current stuff, whatever the current stuff is. But I do have some vintage. But I think what sort of piqued my interest, even though it was a little bit, is the local card shop who is still in business, has been around for I think 42 years.
Wow.
One of the longest continually operating card shops in the country. Maybe not but one of, and it's in my backyard. And for the longest time, they have a lot of vintage. And of course, they carry all the modern stuff and stuff. But even back in the 80s and 90s, they would have stuff from 40s, 50s, and 60s, and now some of it really nice stuff. Some of it, I did a video of just looking through some of my 63 Topps cards that I picked up as a probably a 40 or 50 card lot that are well loved and worn and stuff like that, and they'd sell those types of things as well. But there used to be a picture in the shop. They've taken it down now. Just a little regular picture. They used to have it on the cash register. And I'm not sure when it was taken. I want to say it was maybe the mid to late 90s. And it's their display case. And their display case is full. They had mainly 52 Topps. they had several Jackie. No, it wouldn't be Jackie Robinson. He wasn't in 52, was he? Yeah,
Yeah, he has 52.
yeah, yeah. So Jackie Robinson, he had several. I think six mantles. I mean, you name it. It was like the cream of the crop, and they were all in decent condition. And they were saying, yeah, back then, the mantles were maybe going for
Yeah.
1,500, maybe 2,000, and they had like six of them in there, and I it's just like, oh my gosh, that display case now, and they were in, because when he would buy that vintage stuff, he would typically buy it in really good condition. The stuff that he has now, if it's vintage, it's in fairly good condition. I picked up my 53 Tops mantle, my 52 Bowman mantle, from him, and he buys some good stuff. And so I know they probably would have graded out at 6, 7, 8s, probably maybe not a 9, but I mean, just today, what that display case would be worth. And it was
Yeah.
just their normal inventory back in the day. It's
I
just
kick
amazing.
myself for not buying some of those cards. I mean, that Jackie Robinson wasn't, his cards have just gone crazy. They weren't, out of reach back in the day. And that 52 Bowman mantle, I just didn't like the card. He's like standing there like this. He looks like a coach or something. So I just
Yeah,
didn't like the card growing up. And that wasn't one of the mantles. If I had to spend my money, which I didn't have a lot of, on a mantle, it wasn't be that one, you know. But then I ended up with half the set or whatever, with most of the stars in it, except for him. So it's like it's something I have to break down and get it, like I just did
yeah,
with the 54 Bowman set. I had every card but him, just because
uh,
I never liked the 54 Bowman man. Like it wasn't. I'm not going to say I didn't like it. It wasn't one of the cards. If I had a choice, that wasn't
yeah,
high on my list until it was the last big star I needed to set. Right. So
yeah,
things change.
yeah. I do like the 54 Bowman mantle and the 54 Ted Williams Bowman, the short print.
Yeah, I love
The
54 Williams now, but that's another one I just wasn't goo over. The 56 is just gorgeous. The
yeah,
one of the 54 tops, the portrait card. I think that's a
yeah.
gorgeous card. The 50 and 51 Bowmans are nice. And the leaf card. I mean, that thing. Did you get one of those recently? Somebody just got one of those recently. Oh, you know what? It was Josh Card Collector.
Josh, yes, yes. Josh picked up the Ted Williams.
But if anybody
The
on there
one,
hasn't seen it, I mean, it's such a gorgeous card. Where is mine? I have a whole box. I have a whole box of Leafs here. The Ruth,
oof,
Agio, the Stan Musial rookie, and
oh,
anyway, the it's a,
yes,
this is a beautiful
yeah,
one for the trade. It's just
oh
perfectly
yeah. I
set.
mean,
Just a gorgeous
because
leaf card.
you tend to see ones, because I've just occasionally looked at some on eBay, and that registry, like that background yellow, if it's off, it just makes, they're beautiful cards, but if the registry is intact, if the registry's off, it just, with the different colors, to me it just throws things off. And if I ever get one, it would have to be one where that registry is in line.
Yeah,
But
I'm with you.
they
I
are nice.
registry is way more important to me than corners on vintage cards because, like,
Oh
you
yeah,
take the 54 tops, 52 too. They have a lot of surface issues. Like, go looking for a Hank Aaron rookie. You'll see a lot of them where
oh
there's
yep,
dots, all over the face, or you have serious registration issues. And
yep,
the 54 seems to be extra, susceptible to that, and the 52s to a large degree too. And so I'd rather have a little bit of rounded corners and have a nice crisp, like here's the registration on this is just gorgeous.
oh
It's a little off
yeah,
center, It's a little off center. The
That's not
corners,
bad, but that's not bad. That's yeah.
but I mean the
What I
registration
don't,
is just perfect. No, no, no,
yeah.
no real creasing. The color is vibrant. I mean, it drives me crazy. Like if there's some imperfection across the face or some key area of the
Face.
car that takes away from the eye appeal.
Because yeah, to me I'd always see the flaw. Like once I know it, like if it's like, oh, gorgeous card accept.
Yeah,
Yeah, but for me, for vintage, centering is a lot more to me, and other people have different thoughts. Centering to me is a lot more important than corners. I mean, I've seen some, again, just looking around at some vintage ones. I'll see a 1950s card in a 5, all right, or even a 4 with some rounded corners, and I look at a 6 or 7, and it's way off center, but the corners are sharp, and I'm looking at it, and I can't get beyond the fact that the card is way off to the left or something,
well,
and I'm just like, I don't care about I just it's a bit like you said, your visual, and for me, it's that visual, because every time I would, for the amount of money I'd have to spend to look at that card, and the absolute first thing I would see is it's off center. I
yep.
I wouldn't get any enjoyment out of it. Yeah, I own the card, and oh, I have a great grade because the corners are sharp.
I'm the
No,
same way. I'm the same way. Every once in a while, excuse me. Every once in a while, there is a card that's off center that just strikes my fancy for some reason. Like for whatever reason, that particular card with that particular cut just really appeals to me, and I'll pick it up, especially if it's super sharp, like out of a
yeah,
pack. But even some that aren't in, that are in lower grade, I don't know what it is about cards, but it's almost like a feng shui thing for me.
mm-hmm.
And I will pick up a card. It has to speak to me. I see sevens that just look like, crap to me. They're not good looking cards, but they're a 7. And then you'll find a
Yeah,
4, 5 that looks, twice as good. Let me show you this.
yeah,
So here's a 54, and as we've noted, the registration, and you've noted, and we're both like centering. I mean, look at the centering and the registration on this one.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
That's
and I'm a 2.
yep.
And
Yeah,
this is why I buy my cards based on looks and not the technical grade, because I have seen, 5s that I wouldn't want to own. They got lines, this
oh
year's
yeah,
Victoria, those print lines. And I've seen
yep,
5s, I think even 6s that have the print lines. And this is just a way better looking card to me. I buy all my
yeah,
cards based on eye appeal. And,
yep,
I have lots of lower grade cards. And I swear, if you came here and you looked at them, you'd probably think they look nice. Because I become
yeah,
very good at picking out low grade, really good looking cards. And you get them for a fraction of what you would pay, obviously. I mean, these things are going for ridiculous money in the higher grades. But, like a Hank Aaron in a
yeah,
7, what are you going to pay for that
yeah.
versus
I know.
and
Yeah,
seven's
there's
better?
yeah. I was lucky that 54 Topps Williams, the 250 card, the yellow background. I got that. It's in a BVG, but I got it in a 7. I wasn't necessarily looking at a 7, so I wasn't like, hey, but that was the one. And but for the price,
Yeah.
I was like, and then I got a decent deal on it, and I'm like, well, that's because I had a sort of a budget in mind, and so it was like, this is how much I'm willing to spend on it. So I wanted to get the nicest copy. And again, I saw others 7s or 6s, and I just passed right by them. Even I'm
Yep.
like, no, the centering, it didn't speak to me. That card. Now, the only thing that and again, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. Obviously, it's not perfect. But in the part of the cap, there's one of those like little, was it a fisheye? Just a small little, circle print mark in part of
Yeah.
his hat. It just it's not. I don't notice it all the time because I'm just looking at the card itself. So when I saw it, it didn't. I knew it was there, so I didn't get, after I bought it, have remorse of like, oh, it's on there. But I saw it, but it just, to me, it just didn't. In my eyes, it doesn't distract from. Yeah.
And I like that you said print mark. PSA calls them print defects. Baseball cards don't have defects. Come on.
Defects.
That's a very negative word.
Yeah.
I like print mark better.
It's just part of the printing process. Just the way it did it, you get little specks of dust. They don't do it in clean rooms, so you're gonna get stuff flying around. A little speck of something gets in, and so before you know it, you have 200 cards printed with the same exact mark at the
Yep.
same exact spot. When I was looking for my 1980 Ricky Henderson rookie, I looked at multiple examples, and like at the same spot of the card, you'd see a similar, maybe smaller in ones and maybe more pronounced in others, but it was like in the same spot of the card.
Right. I mean,
And
yeah, you'll
yeah,
notice that a lot of them, like the 67 mantle, most of them, and mine doesn't have it, and I'm so glad it doesn't, because most of them has a little pink mark at the bottom. I don't know if you ever
mm,
noticed, but any of you watching, or if you
yeah,
have it, look at or go onto eBay and just look at all the 67 mantles. And zoom in, you'll see there's like a pink purplish kind of little mark at the bottom of the card, and that's one of the print defects from that one. I discovered one that I had never heard of before. I've never seen anybody else point it out. I've never read about it in a magazine. It's not listed as a variation. But if you look, it's the 1959. I think is it Willie Mays and Duke Snyder. I think they're standing there, or is it Ashburn? It's escaping me at the moment.
meh.
Um, but the
Is a
59
dual player card?
card with Mays and another player, and there's one version that's clean, and there's one version that has a mark right in between them, kind of at the bottom center. And when I was looking for that card, I kept passing it over because I didn't notice in this print defect or print mark. I just broke my own
Yep.
rule. This print mark.
Yeah.
And then I found, so I have two of them. One has it and one doesn't. But what I've discovered is lots have that mark. So what happens is that printing plate or whatever gets a scratch on it at some point. And,
Mm,
until they replace it, every card's going to have that kind of thing. I'm not a printer, so I don't know how
yeah.
to technically say it, but it's my
Yeah.
understanding that that's what occurs. Um, and some of those are, known to be variations. Like I think to the 1971 Jim Northrup, there's a black blob version and a plain version.
Okay.
And there's just
Yeah.
black blob, and I think there's other players with that too. It's just literally a black blob, like somebody had a marker on it,
Yep.
but it's in the print.
Yep. Being a Wade Boggs collector, and I see it all the time. It just drives me nuts. They are selling this 1988 Topps All-Star card of Boggs, and they call it the teardrop error because in it has a little bit of a right under his eye. There's like a little bit of a yellow little
Uh,
smudge or dot, and again, all it is just like that Henderson where there's a fisheye sometimes in the top left corner. It's not an error card, and they're some of these are asking they're $25 because it's the teardrop error. I'm like, it's just a print. It's and I don't know. That always bugs me when I see one of those listings. I'm like, God, just stop it because
how about this?
it's not.
How about this card? This is like
But
this card carries a premium. Do you know this card?
no, what's
All right,
different about it?
you see this little kid right there?
Oh, okay, in the top right corner, yeah.
That's Patrick Kane.
Oh, as a
He was
kid, okay.
at a game when his dad took him as a little kid.
Oh, wow. So
And
that's
there's
a
nothing about
pre-rookie
the card.
card.
It's just like a novelty, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, this thing, is worth it sells for 30 times what it should. It should be $1 card. And I mean, you're
Yeah.
you're hard pressed to find them for less than 30, and most
Yeah.
most more than that.
Well, what was that basketball card? There was a basketball card recently where someone was sitting in the front row. Not the Menendez. There's something.
Oh, it
Someone
might be
found
that.
a like a hoops card of someone that was like 50-cent card, and someone picked out that it was like the Menendez brothers or something weird like
Yeah,
that.
I
And suddenly the
remember
price
seeing
started
that,
rocking it up.
but I forget. But I remember seeing what you're talking about. Now there was also that Sam Vincent card. Do you remember? Do you know that card in the hoops?
No, I don't think so.
I think it was 91. I think. Um, where it's a card of Sam Vincent, but Michael Jordan's in it. But Jordan is
Okay.
wearing a number 12. And what
Oh,
happened
because
was
something with his uniform.
somebody stole his jersey before the game. And it's the only game he ever wore number
Ever.
12. And that's the only card ever captured of him in a game wearing number 12. And so that
Yeah.
has a little bit of novelty. But I mean, they produced like 284 million of those copies of that card. So it's certainly not rare. I think I have 30
Well,
copies of it, and it's probably hard to give away.
there's in my box collection. There's one card. I'm trying to remember which one it is now, but where Boggs is either on base or run, or, getting tagged out, or it's someone else's card, and he just happens to be in it. So that's on my checklist. But I found recently, and I didn't realize this, from 1987 Fleer, I think. I forget what Red Sox player, but all you see is, and it's like a dugout shot. You see the back of Boggs. You can maybe even barely see his head, but you see the number 26.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I probably need to add that to my collection because
Right,
okay,
right.
it's going to cost me it's probably going to cost me like 50 cents and $4 shipping. But
Well,
um,
there's the 73 card like that. I
yeah,
think it's Bobby Bonds and Willie Stargell's in it. So when I was growing up, it's him going back to first and Willie Stargell standing there. The card
yeah,
actually could be a Willie Stargell card. It could have been either or. And so
yeah,
that, was extra special to me when I see him. Or there's a 1978, you're working on that set. There's a
yeah.
Felix Milan. And Felix Milan is
Okay,
turning to play. And Dave Parker, you can see the big 39 is sliding into second base. And so as a
yeah,
kid, that was, one that I thought was cool too. Because Felix
yeah,
Milan, I don't know if he used to choke way up on the back.
yeah.
And he
Yep.
was funny to watch back. And it always just stuck with me. So I have his card with Dave Parker included, so that's great.
Yeah. It's weird with player collectors, and it's at least for me. I'm sure other player collectors are like, yeah, I like to have a run, this and that. But for hardcore player collectors of just finding like all the oddball stuff, like hey, I found out that '87 Flair has Boggs in the background of his back. Okay, I need to get that card.
Yeah.
It's
Well, you know what? I
it's
mean,
weird. It's a different way of collecting.
you're so lucky your player played when he did. I mean, if you collect Art Devlin cards, like there's only like 7.5, maybe not even that
Yeah,
many. Then what do?
yeah,
You have to, I mean, nowadays, if you collect the vintage guys, every year they got all kind of new product with like, I don't know how I can get excited about getting a 2021 Ty Cobb. It's excited
yeah,
about that. I like that they include them, and I'll tell you why. I like it for the young collectors. I like it so
yes,
a lot of these, I like that they include Willie Stargell because these young collectors may not know who he is if they're not from Pittsburgh, and even
yep,
some who are in Pittsburgh might not know. And when I was growing up and I collected my cards, that's how I learned about record holders and I learned about the old players. Like in 1976, they had the those sporting news cards,
yep,
and
yep,
they had Pop Trainer, Honus Wagner. I think there was over Cleveland Alexander card in there. I think Ted Williams. And you get to see these little players, and there's somebody because they're on
yep,
this special subset. And there's only a few of them. Mickey Cochran, I think, is on there, and like in '79 they included those record breakers, the record holders, I should say.
Yep.
And so at that time, George Sisler was the singleton hits leader, and Ty Cobb was the all-time hits leader at that time. And I know that because I know that card, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
how I learned about it. So I think it
Yeah.
is good they include the old players, but it's just getting ridiculous. Like every set, there's so many different sets.
Yeah.
It's just like every time you get a care package, it's going to be loaded with all these old players in modern. Like it just looks
Yeah.
odd to see Ralph Kiner in a Prism card.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
it
Yeah.
doesn't look right. A
Yeah.
black
Now,
photo with a shiny. You know what I mean?
I do have to say, and maybe this is limited to only a couple sets, and maybe it's Archives Stadium Club. I've seen some 2020 Stadium Club of like Ted Williams, something, and they're gorgeous. I mean,
Yeah.
the photography, color photos of stuff where you haven't seen that image before. There are some from an aesthetic point of view, gorgeous pictures of those vintage, all-time great players. Now, again, do I need to go after the refractor, X-fractor, gold refractor, orange refractor of a Ted Williams 2020 Stadium Club? No. But if I have the base, to me, that's a cool Ted Williams card just because of the image on it. Other ones, though, like you said, a prism or some other design where you just slapping Ty Cobb on, you're like, well, maybe not so
Yeah,
much. But there are a few out there that look good.
don't get me wrong. Some of those prisms, especially in the football, I think in basketball, some of those vet prisms, those old players, they look great. Like I remember, I think it's a prism, an older prism, I think, where I have Pete Maravich, and it's just a cool card. It might not be prism,
Yeah.
and in this year's football, the last few years, some of them, you get a Dick Butkus on a prism, but I'm just saying it's odd because these
It
players
is odd. It is. Yeah.
50, 60 years, some of them 70 years. But I got this. Shannon from Back to the Cardboard just included this in a holiday card for me. And
That
it's
is
great.
cool.
I think it's
Yeah.
Archives. I collected
Yep.
these. This was the first year, 81, that I ordered the whole set from Topps. It was the first year I ever did that.
Okay.
And it was disappointing to get because I got it, and then it's in this nice, crisp box, and they're in perfect condition, and I don't want to look through them. We used to always look through them, flip them, do different. And so they're just in this box, and I remember how disappointed I was because I had nothing to chase. I had them all, and they were all in perfect condition. And because they were in perfect condition, I never wanted to take them out of that box. So eventually, years later, I took them all out and put them in an album so I could at least look at them. But when I was a little kid, those albums weren't exactly like everywhere. They weren't all that defined, until the bigger boom. But this is I believe in Archives from 2 years ago or something, I think. But it features that you remember his warm up, the way he did the bat, where he would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of a cool card because it shows him in that process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And
I said,
got
they have
hitting
some.
lessons from him. So this is George was always dear to my heart. I mean, I got hitting lessons from him in Three Rivers Stadium, one of the highlights of my life.
Yeah.
And I got his autograph back behind me.
Yeah, but just some of the photography, you just don't. I don't know where they find the photography for some of these, but it's like you said, that's a cool picture of him. It happens to be in a newer product, but for some of the stuff. Now again, if it's Boggs and it's on some shiny prism or something, it's on my checklist. I have to, if it's not a 1 of 1 or super low serial number, I'll go after it just because that's what I collect.
Yeah, of course.
But
I Medium Club or something. Just the ones that I like. There's 2 million Roberto Clemente's from 2000 until now. There's like 2 million ones probably. But if they look good to me and it's a cool card, I'll pick it up. So I'm not
Yeah.
knocking it. It's a bit ridiculous how many they.
Yeah, it is good for the kids to learn about the history of the game, and yeah, I am fortunate enough with my Boggs collection. Two things. One is that with his playing days, it was like he ended his career. His last cards were, I think, technically 2000. He retired in '99. So they did some like career cards with all the stats, but that it was like sort of in the era of the late 90s where you started to get some of these lower serial numbered parallel cards, but he was toward the end of his career, so he wasn't one of the hot stars that was always featured. Because now if you were to go back and try to find some of those late 90s rare parallels or inserts, you're paying through the nose.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate enough that he's not in a lot of those sets. And the other thing is, relatively speaking, Boggs isn't, he's not on the hot hobby list. That he's like, he's a great player, great guy, but in terms of the hobby love, there aren't a lot of Boggs collectors. In fact, I don't know. I may be doing a video on this. I'm not sure, but Beckett has the star unlisted stars and semi stars. So in the back of their, if you're going through and you don't see your player's name specifically mentioned in it with a price, and I just use it as a guide. I know eBay's the best way to go about it, but I still get the magazines anyway. If you don't see your player specifically listed, then you say, okay, well, there's a price listing for a semi-star or an unlisted star.
Right.
And Boggs is listed, and again, other Hall of Famers Boggs are listed as semi-stars. And it's Beckett's way of saying, okay, in terms of hobby love or hobby interest, they're not as popular, which I can sort of see. But you look at the unlisted stars, and I'm going through the list, I don't know who half of these people are. And it's probably because there's some hot rookie that people are after this card, and that's why it's made it to the star list. I'm like, I look at a player, I'm like, he's had 2 years in the major leagues, and he's a star. Well, okay,
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
he's a current
that might
star.
be
It's
card
it's interesting.
standards,
It's just
but it's not by obviously Boggs is a star, but
yeah,
they must go by card standards because nowadays it's getting a card of a guy in his 24th year. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants a modern card of a guy in his 24th year. They want those rookies who may never play or make it.
yeah.
Prospect.
Well,
Um, or you obviously want the big rookie cards. I always pull out the rookie cards in my sets, and I put them in the front. That's where I keep, I think a lot of us do. Or if you have them
yeah,
in binders, you get the 4 pages and you slide, the 4 rookies or the top, rookies or cards in there. Which, by
yeah.
the way, PSA graded cards fit great in those 4.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you know that, but if you have a set and you're not going to look through it constantly, I mean, it's a nice way to if you have 4 gradeds or a couple of gradeds, they fit in there pretty well. You might just have to like put a little piece of Scotch tape or something at the top just so they don't slide out. But
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I've even found it that if I'm opening a newer pack of cards, I'll come across like an Albert Pujols, surefire Hall of Famer, but he's getting toward the end of his career, and it's like, oh yeah, I got an Albert Pujols. Now,
yeah,
if you don't, unless you're a Pujols collector or an Angels collector or at St. Louis and we're following him and still collected his cards, it's most people aren't gonna say, "Oh wow, I got a Pujols card," and put that and suddenly put it in a penny sleeve and a top holder. A Hall of Famer or not yet, but is going to be.
yeah.
But it's his 18th year card or whatever it is, and people they don't really care too much about it because they're looking for the Lou Bobs and all this Bouchettes and all this stuff that
Yeah,
again, that's just
I
not
think
me.
that I
But
think that whole phenomenon started around '87. that was the first year I remember. Like people would show you an album full of cards, and there were 30 Bonds, and 30 McGuires, and 30 Canseco, and they would have
Yeah.
whole binders, like half the binders, one player.
Yep.
Because that's when I think, obviously the first big rookie card where that was even a term, I believe was Don Mattingly in
Yep.
80.
84 Donruss. Yep.
So that was the first big one. And, so then, they had in 86, you had so many good players at that time. Or
Oh yeah.
we thought they were all going to end up in the Hall of Fame. Now none of them are, right? Like Roger
Yeah.
Clemens, Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco, Barry Bonds. I mean, I
Bonds.
I don't
Yeah.
know. And things don't always work out the way you expect them. You
Yeah.
watched Jose Canseco. He was a beast, man, in his
Yeah. Oh
prime.
yeah.
Everybody
Oh,
wanted to win Canseco. I mean, he
yeah.
was unbelievable. And it was like when that ball hit him on top of the head, and that fly
Yeah.
ball.
Went over the.
It was like the
Yep.
downfall of his career. Like he couldn't shake that or something. But God, watching
Yeah.
him pound that ball is it was something special. He was just intimidating up there. And I saw
Yeah.
him in person when I lived in Florida. I ran into him at an outdoor mall, and man, is he big! Yes, a
Yeah.
lot of people I'm sure have seen him probably at the national or shows, but he is a big
Yeah.
dude still after all these years.
Wow. Yeah. Now, do you have many shows in your area that you go to
No,
or
none,
no?
no, none.
Yeah, there's a Philly show. I've never been to it, but I guess that's a pretty big show. I don't know if it's
I've heard.
if they
Yeah,
do it every quarter or every maybe just once a year. So I'm not sure. I have to check in. But for me, that's not too bad. I mean, it's maybe a 3.5 hour drive. But we have a small little local mall that maybe a couple times a year they have a small show with maybe 20 tables or something. There aren't that many shows. So it's like my local card shop, which I'm fortunate to have a local card shop 10 minutes away, but they don't turn over a whole lot of inventory. And in fact, they're talking about maybe retiring and so I don't know how much longer they're going to be in business. But other than that, it's just online. And
yeah,
for all these, so because for some of these vintage, it's like okay, so some people don't do a good job in trying to sell their cards because they take the crappiest photos.
yeah,
They hold them in this, they're blurry. I'm like, seriously, I can't see the card. And, I guess I'm not too afraid to buy a high end card like on eBay or some other online thing, but to be able to see it and look at it and say, yeah, I can't really see any imperfections or this or whatever. That's the other thing about the national that I like, or any show, is you can, if you see a card, you can examine it, you can look at it and say, hey, is this one that I want to buy, as opposed to hoping you get a good picture of a card on eBay. So that sort of makes it a little bit more difficult. But for me, it's like there's no really other place to go.
yeah. But you can get some good deals that way. I went on there and well, I mean, I several times, but this one I have a couple recollection specifics, and one was a 61 football lot. And it was somebody that didn't sell a lot of cards, didn't know how to explain them, didn't take very good pictures, but it was some big players on there. There was like a Don Amici, there was a Bobby Lane, I think of Sam Hoff. There was a seven. It was like seven cards of good players, from that era. So I bid on it. I ended up being the only bidder, and I got the whole lot for I think $7, right? And
Yeah,
so I'm not honestly I'm not expecting these things come. It was like they were right out of the pack. Like somebody I think in
really.
an antique store, and somebody brought them in pages, and and I reached out to her. I'm like, do you have any more of these cards? And she's like, I have a few more, but they're not in that sharp a condition. She's like, I was shocked, that nobody bid on these, and they went for so little. And but you're taking a
Yeah.
chance if the pictures aren't too good. But that's an example where it worked out. And I had another one where I was looking for a '63 Sandy Koufax, and 63 is very condition sensitive. That card is not cheap to buy in
Yep.
really nice shape. And I found somebody, again, it wasn't a good picture. And they had a raw 63 Sandy Koufax, and they had a Jim Cott graded 5.5, Beckett
Okay.
5.5, and they had another card, and I forget what it was now. And so for the lot of cards, it was like an opening bid of $30 or something, and $3 shipping. So I won it for 33, and that's
Yeah.
back. It was before eBay started. You had to pay taxes now, so it was
Yeah.
33. Um, and so anyway, I got it, and man, it was in such great condition, John. I sent it to SGC, and it got a 7.5, and a
The
7.5
Koufax.
for a 7.5 at that time was selling for $130, $125, something like that. And I bought the lot
Yeah.
for 30.
Yeah. I have a 63 Koufax, but it's in a 4.5, 4.5, I think. Still, and I got it at my local card shop, and then I sent it in for grading. But man, yeah, they're so hard with that color bottom border.
Yeah.
Really hard to get in good shape. But so
Anything
I
with
was
red
happy
and
with a
black
4.5. Oh,
seems to be the red and black borders seem to be the worst,
yeah.
especially black.
Now,
Yeah.
which I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think what cards have a red
Well, the
border to them.
63 is at the bottom there. A lot
Oh
of
well, yeah. Well, there's
red.
a lot of them are red, but some of them are like green. I think the
Yeah,
Koufax
they
is
have. Yeah, they
green,
have
isn't it?
different colors.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's a
I
very
thought you meant like the whole border around it. Yeah.
yeah. No, no, no. There are actually I don't know of any only modern cards I think that have red board. Oh no, no, no. The old tobacco, the old Pacific Coast League cards, the and the shoeless
Oh.
Joe Jackson rookie. Those are red
Yeah.
border.
Okay. Yeah, but the main one is like the 71 is just
Yeah, we all know that one.
crazy, just crazy. One day I want to get obviously that 71 Munson, um, and even the lower the thing that when I've looked at the 71 Munsons, again I don't care too much about the corners, but with it being horizontal and the way that set was designed, those so thin. I don't know if you've noticed it, but so any type of slightly off center, it's almost like it's off the right or left hand side completely.
Yeah,
It's so hard that left and right, not so much the top to bottom, but something because it's horizontal that in that one the left to right, it just if it's off a little bit, it's just like almost off the card.
yeah. I had that card. I knew that card like the back of my hand. I probably had multiple copies of that card. And when I took all my cards out of storage and everything, I could not find that darn card to save my life. And I had like near set, and I know I had that card. It might not have been in great condition, but I know I had it, and I never could find it. So I ended up having to buy one. But I mean, you have to have that card in your collection. If you're a baseball
I
fan
know.
and you
Yeah.
like vintage cards, you got to have that 71 Munson. That's way
Oh,
better.
it is. Yeah, that's a nice card. So one day I will. That's one I'm gonna own as well.
Like the Pete Rose
And
second year.
again, the what?
It's like the Pete Rose second year card. That's way better than a
Oh yes.
floating head
Oh,
rookie.
way better. Yep. Oh, that second year Rose. Oh, now I have a 65 Rose that is in a decent. I want to say it's in a 6 maybe.
That's a nice card.
Beckett, but um, the 67 I have, I never got that graded because I don't know why I bought it. I probably bought that 30 years ago,
Yeah.
and the registry's off. I got it from my card shop, and it was probably a discounted price. And yeah, it's like a blurry photo, and I'm like, why did I even buy it? It probably only cost me like $10 or something. But hey, it was
Yeah.
a 67 Rose. But now I probably wouldn't even have it graded. So yeah,
Back then things were a little different. I remember when I was a kid and I was going to the flea market or the occasional card show, I was so excited to find vintage cards because there was no eBay, and you didn't like
Yep.
now you can go on and find. If I want a 52 Mantle, I got 20 choices. You know,
Yep.
there's probably a T206 on eBay, but there's auction houses, and you can find whatever you're looking for whenever you're looking for it, pretty much these days.
Yep.
Back then you couldn't, and of course, I didn't know all the sets. I mean, I used to read. I remember when I found a baseball card magazine at the store. I was like, "What? A
Yeah.
magazine for baseball
Magazine.
cards?
It's,
I gotta have that." And I learned a lot about old sets, but that was the only way I could learn about them. I'm an only child in my living in the country. I'll go to the flea market, buy what the heck I could find. If there was a Clemente that I could get my hands on, I'd grab it. And so
yep.
when I took my cards out of storage, I was looking through them and I'm like, what, wow, this thing's off center. Every once in a while I'd
Yeah.
find one of these cards, and I didn't like it. And at one time I loved it
Yeah.
because we didn't even really consider centering. At least I didn't when I was young, and I certainly
Yeah.
didn't consider corners too much. But surprisingly, my cards were so cherished by me that I actually kept them in really great condition. Like when they got into my possession, they really pretty much stayed that
Yeah.
way. And when I got older and grading came out, I had them graded, and I had a 56, my 56 Ted Williams graded a 7.5, I think. My mantle graded, I had two mantles that graded sevens. I had a 56 Jackie Robinson graded six. I had a 41 play ball Jimmy Fox that graded a seven. So I obviously had to keep them in good shape for them to get those grades. But
Yep.
to me, I didn't really notice. I didn't like those sharp cards any more than I liked my cards that would grade a three. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
they all look the same to me.
Yep. Well, in the early '80s, I came across a neighborhood kid had I don't know. He just I mentioned something about I collect baseball cards. He says, "Hey, I have some that were my uncles or grandfathers or whatever," and he had a stack maybe about that thick, maybe 50 cards of 1964 tops,
Ah, nice.
and they were beat up and wrinkled in the corners and stuff. He's like, and I can't remember whether I traded him something for it or whether I gave him $5-10 or something. I don't know, but one of the cards was a Mickey Mantle, and I was like, I own a Mickey Mantle card. Now, if you were to look at it, it is. I don't even know how PSA or Beckett would grade it. Definitely miscut because you can almost see the team. It's so far down, you can see is it the team name or something at the top of another card,
Yeah,
just slightly.
yeah.
So it is way off, and it has creases and it would may even do like be a one miscut, but for roughly 12-year-old owning a Mickey Mantle card, I mean, it was like, wow. And so today I look at it and I go, but I still have it and I'll always have it. And,
Yes.
will I have it graded? Probably not. But it's that Mickey Mantle that I had since I was like 12 years old.
Yeah, I have those cards too, and I won't upgrade them because they're just so nostalgic to me. Like some of my first
Yeah.
Clemente, I won't upgrade them. But one of my first ones, got a five. I got a five. I had a beautiful 65, and it got a three, and I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. And I recently I pulled it out because it's always just perplexed me because it was one of the first cards I ever had graded, and it's just so
Yeah.
sharp, pretty centered, and I put it under a magnifying glass and some light,
Yep.
and I noticed there's just when you really get a magnifying there's just like a little waviness in the card. It's not creased,
Okay.
but I don't even know what to call it. But I mean, you really have to look. You can't see it with the naked eye. I went for a decade without
Yeah.
ever catching it. And my first Clemente was a 66, and I got this from my friend. And my dad always talked about Clemente. He was a little before my time, but he was a god in Pittsburgh. And this card looked like somebody put it in their back pocket and went to 12 movies, and then took it out. And maybe it was just wrinkled, it was in somebody's pocket. But man, I cherished that card so much because it was the only Clemente I had at the time, and it was one of my oldest cards too. On top of that, so
Yeah. Yeah, not to get into the whole grading thing because it's subjective, and I understand it's humans looking at a card and they have guidelines. But I look at certain cards on eBay, and my 53 mantle is a Beckett 2.5. Now it's off center, but the corners aren't too bad. Again, not great. Okay, and I'm looking at it, and overall, it's a clean copy.
yeah,
And I go on and I see PSA 2s, PSA 3s, and I look at it, and the coloring at the bottom of the 53s, again, that's another one where you have that bottom color border. Chipped, or the corners are really, frayed and off. And I'm like, how did that get a 3 or 4? Now I know there is, if you look at it close, and I knew when I bought it, down in the bottom left in that color area, there's like some indents. Not like someone wrote or anything, but it's pressure points. Okay, but I'm like, okay, well maybe, but it looks, it one of those say, hey, it presents better than the 2.5. Now, if I ever get that crossed over, and I don't know if I ever will get some of those Beckett's crossed over to PSA. I'm wondering if it would be interesting to see what PSA would say, and maybe it would bump up to a 3 or something. It doesn't really matter. I mean, again, it's my card. I'm not selling it. I'm not looking
exactly. If you're just collecting it and you love it, who cares? That's the thing. Like, to buy a card like that, you're going to pay 10 times more for a high grade one, 10 times more at least.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference nowadays between a 9 and a 10 can be thousands. And the funny thing is if it's so awesome to have a 10 over a 9, right? Then how come these people that send them in for looking for a 10, you wouldn't even send them in if you thought it was getting a 9? If it's so easy to tell, then you should never send in a card that gets a 9, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, none of us collectors could tell the difference between a 9 and a 10. When I look at my card, I ain't looking under a loop, and a lot of times, when you understand that grading is a technical grade, right? Mm-hmm. It is. They don't even take the look of the card into account. And people will say they take it in somewhat. No, they don't. I mean, if it's the paper loss, it's a 1 or a 1.5 mandate. It doesn't matter how it looks. I have a 33 Sport King Ty Cobb. That's a great copy, but it has like the tiniest of a little, I guess it's a pinhole. You don't really notice it until you look. But, it's an automatic 1.5. No matter how sharp the corners are, no matter how great the card looks, it's a 1.5. It's a technical grade. And, that's how they do it. But if you're just a collector, I mean, I always think so. Warren Buffett, there's a famous story about Warren Buffett, the greatest investor that ever lived. And he was very frugal, right? He only drove one car, and they asked him why he only had one car when he was the richest man in the world. And he said, because I can only drive one at a time. And he house his whole life. So there's this kind of famous story about him. He's with some investment bankers or something at a meeting, and there's a quarter on the ground, and nobody wants to pick it up. And then after a while, Warren Buffett picked it up and put it in his pocket, and everybody's looking at him like, "You're the richest guy in the world. What do you, And so he would always say that he would think of, like, if he spends that quarter, what he could have made with it had he kept it and invested it. And I'm kind of like that with card grading, right? Like, let's say that I want to do a 1978 set registry. What would that cost me to send all my cards in and PSA? $10,000?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, man, I can get a 33 Gaudy Ruth. I can get for 10 grand, I could get two nice cards, or I could get 100 very nice, cards that are cheaper. And so every time I want to go, it kind of bothers me. You have to pay to get a reholder, and you have to pay for the ship. And if it's an expensive card, you got to buy all that insurance, and so you're constantly doing
Yeah.
this. And then if you get wrapped up where you'll only accept one grading company, every card you get, you got to send them back to get a
Yeah.
crossover, and it's just constant money out of your pocket. And it's so much easier. It's so easy to buy cards that are already graded.
Yeah.
And for my money, would I rather send it to PSA and wait 7 months to get my cards back, or
Right.
could I go on and buy one cheaper? By the
Yep.
time you get the insurance, you package it up, and it's not cheap to grade, high, expensive
Yeah.
cards. I mean, how
Yep.
much is it to grade $1,000 a card that's valued at $1,000?
Probably at least $75 at least. I think that's
Yeah.
what
So
tier
if I'm
system
not
is with PSA.
right, so if it's not a 101 and I'm not Vegas Dave and I'm going to go sell it, then why do I, why do I
Yeah.
care? Um, you know, I mean, yeah, I would if I'm going to sell it. Yeah, maybe I'm going to send it out, especially if it's going to get a 9 or a 10. Oh, heck yeah. I mean, you might have.
Yep.
It
Yeah.
just blew my mind when grading earlier, a few years back. Like you'd see I don't know, like a 9. I don't know, like let's say a 1975 Johnny Bench, and you could buy a real sharp
Yep.
one raw for, I don't know, $15. But if you found one that was a 9, it was $350.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a good strategy back then, at least. If you're like us and you've been collecting all your life, good cards. You can grade a card. I don't need PSA to grade
Yep.
my cards. Um,
Yeah.
you buy them and send them in, and then you get your own 9. But you'd buy it for 15 and get your 9. So back then, it was
Yeah.
actually better to send your cards in for grading. It was cheaper, really.
Yep.
But now I
Yep.
find it's the opposite. Now I find it's cheaper usually just to buy them. I mean, finding those rare gems that are going to grade a 9 are getting harder and harder and harder.
Oh yeah.
No, you're not going to find those like I did 5 years ago.
Yeah. Now, when I bought the group of Beckett graded cards I bought all of them raw from my local card shop. And when I sent them in, or even actually as I was buying them, I was looking at the corners and the centering and figuring out, okay, well, this may grade a 4, this one may has a chance at a 6, because what I did was, being a raw card, I looked at raw card sales, or roughly estimates of, and I determined whether it was a fair price for me to pay. So that was my thinking of it. And so I forget how many I had. I want to say, let's just say there were 15 that I bought over a several month span, and I sent them all in. So what I did was I wrote down what I thought the grade was going to be, and when I sent them in, so I mean it was almost literally out of the 15, it was evenly split. There were like 5 that graded slightly lower, 5 that I was right on the money, and 5 that actually graded higher than I thought the grading was going to be. So I was off on some to the bad, some to the good, and some I nailed. And it's I don't know. I guess the overall average was, hey, I did a pretty good job of
Yeah.
of guessing.
I always get the grades I think I'm going to get. I'm usually, within a half point. Um, I remember I sent in my Al K-Line rookie was one of the last ones I sent in, and I figured it would get a 4 or a 5. I was hoping for a 5, maybe a 5.5 if I was lucky, and it got a 4.5.
Yeah.
Like it was right where I thought it was going to go. And now if I had a grader, maybe on a better day or a different grader, it might have been a 5, right? Like
Yep.
you don't, or I had a guy in a bad mood, it might have been a 4. When you get into those half grades, I mean,
Oh, the half grade, yeah.
maybe if my name's different, maybe I get a better grade. I don't know. Maybe they don't like
Yeah,
me.
well, like,
Who knows? I don't know. They claim a lot of different people look at those cards, but when you see some of the ones that come out, 7s with a dinged corner or something like
Yeah.
bad, then there's no way more than one person looked at that card. There's no way. There is no
Yeah.
way. Some of these grades. I saw a 10 Joe Montana rookie not so long ago. That darn thing was so off center And I mean, how do you have an off-center 10? And
I
then and
know,
then
and
and then I saw a Bob Gibson rookie card graded a 4.5 that was missing a corner. Like I saved these pictures. I'm going to do a video someday.
wow,
Um,
yeah,
I saw a 633 tattoo orbit Dizzy Dean, and you could probably go on eBay right now. There's a guy that's been selling it for a long time because I want that card. But there's one graded a 6, and it has a very ding lower left corner, and there is no way that is a 6. You know, it's probably, I don't know. It's got to go down to at least like a 4.5 with that dinged corner.
yeah,
There's,
yeah.
maybe you give the benefit of the doubt that it's a 1933 and it's a tattoo orbit, but I have a Rogers Hornsby 6, and it's just blows that one away. There's no way that's a 6.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, it's hard pressed to notice a difference between, especially these modern cards, between a 9 and a 10. To go to a 4 to 4.5, it's like 4. Okay, well, okay, well maybe the centering was 58 point something, 50, and then I don't know. I mean, I think it's a lot easier to tell between like maybe 2 grade levels. Like between a 4 and a 6, you can clearly tell, hey, this one's better. But in some cases, even between a 4 and a 5 or 5 and a 6, you're looking at, it's like, okay, well, and then what's worse is, you look at 3 or 4 examples of a 6 and you go, that's a hell of a lot looking better than that one and that, and but they're all 6s, and it's because it's what they look at, like 4 things, surface, corner, centering, edges, or something like that. Yeah. So again, you could get one that has great centering but bad corners, and another one with great corners but bad centering, and technically it comes out to the right number to say that's a 6 and that's a 6.
Yeah, I think it's
I don't know.
Those back pages, he was talking one day about that there's no way you could tell a difference between a 9 and a 10 on a brand new card. Yeah. It's almost kind of silly. Vintage cards, there was a reason to grade them, because they've been played with, bike spokes, the whole 9 yards. They're old.
Well, and a lot of fakes out there are trimmed cards. Not to get into the other topic. I mean, that's mainly one of the reasons why for the vintage cards I want to buy them graded than raw. Is one, authentic. 2, it's a general estimation. 1, and 2 protects the card. And 3, it's a general estimation of the condition. I don't consider, if it says it's a 5, that it's an absolute 5. Because like you said, you could break it out, resubmit it, and get a 5.5. You could break it out, resubmit it, and get a 4.5.
Right.
Or switch it over from one company to the other and get a change in grade. So when I see a 5 or a 7, or you name it, I don't take it for an absolute. I take it for, okay, it's a higher end card or a mid-range card.
Right.
And so, again, a 4 to a 6, to me, other than price, of course, is just a visual appeal. Because it's there's not, you notice some differences, but...
And you hit on something, the price, right? So, a lot of people like to have the graded cards because, okay, if it's a 4.5, here's the going rate for that. And if it's a 3, here's the going rate for that. Well, that doesn't always work either. Because, I've seen, like, if you go shopping for a vintage card, it's a 4, you will see some that you wouldn't touch, that, you wouldn't pay 2 prices for, right?
Yep.
And then you find that beauty, that 4.5 that looks like it's an 8, and it's just, man, it looks good. And you tell me, I don't know about you, but I pay up for those. If it looks that great, I'll pay a little more for that 4.5. And if it was the same price as a 5 or a 5.5 and it looked that much nicer, I would pay more for the lower graded one. I would pay for the best looking one. And so you cannot always go by that. And I see that a lot. The really perfectly centered lower grade you'll see they get a lot more bids and they sell higher than, like a 3 off center. So not all 3s are created equal. Not all 3s are going to sell the same price. And so,
I know it's weird because you think it would a 3 now, because again, it's beyond the grade, it's the visual appeal for someone. So yeah, I'll see a card. I've looked for cards where I see it in a 5 and I go, well, that just sold for a price of a 6. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to pay that much, well, let me start looking at 6s. And so I see 6s and I see some selling at 7 ranges. It's because they have a better eye appeal that even though it's a 6, it sells for maybe not exactly, because once you start getting higher up, there's a larger difference between the price. But say from a 4 to a 5 to a 6, like you said, you get some 3s that sell for 4 prices, and then you say, well, okay, my thought process is immediately, well, if I'm going to spend that type of money, maybe I'll get a 4, but then I look at the 4s, some of them sell for 3 prices, some of them sell for 5 prices.
Right. And I mean, let's go back.
It goes totally against the grade.
Right. And let's go back to some of those, like, the cards that are in the wrong holders, like that off-center um, Joe Montana rookie, or
Yeah.
like a tattoo orbit that has such a high grade when it's obviously not that great. So then you start to wonder if somebody put it in that holder, right? Because it's hard to believe that somebody's going to grade that a 10. So now, and you'll see these things on there. Like if a card has too high of a grade, I think people stay away from it because you got to question it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
there's a lot of that going on. I don't know about with the new labels. I don't follow this that closely, the grading game.
I don't. Yeah.
I don't like to sell my soul to the graders and let them dictate to me what my collection is, or I don't play that game, so I don't follow it that closely. But they used to. They were people busted for having fake PSA holders, and they would take a lefty card. And those of us who have been collecting for a long time, as soon as you look at it, it's a fake. It's probably not a real holder. There's no way that grades that high. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
So maybe some of these are leftovers from that. That group. I don't know. The big
still floating around
collectors, they know everything there is to know about when the label is, the new label, the newer label, the older label, and the serial number. Like they're really into that. And I defer to them when I have a question.
Yep. Well, I forget who. There's some YouTuber put a video out that says, hey, what to look for if you're buying graded cards, especially vintage and stuff. One, like the really older PSA serial numbers and stuff. Not that they're bad or automatically trimmed, but back then it maybe some stuff wasn't as scrutinized or whatever. And then if you get a card that doesn't quite fit the border, so it moves around a little bit, potentially, no one's accusing anything specifically, but it could have been trimmed a little bit because now there are some cards and some sets that aren't, they aren't all the exact same size. Some of them may be slightly higher than others and fit maybe tighter or looser in those holders. But I've seen some that even as much as the 78s, 79s, 80s and stuff, you look at the picture closely and they're like way off from those edges. Now, I understand, maybe a vending box may have some slight size differential than from a complete set or from a retail pack or what. But I look at some of them and I just go, boy, that just the size of that card just doesn't. Yeah. And again, they're like 8s or 9s or something. Like and I pass. But
but you hit something good. Like with old vintage cards, the printing presses weren't the best, and you see a lot of disparity in the in little sizes or like a little bit of an angled cut. But that's how the card was made.
Cards were made. Yeah.
So is it up to the grading companies to say, well, it shouldn't have been made that way, even though that's the way they made them? You know what I mean? Like if you got a card out of a pack that was a little bit, I mean, it's out of the pack. That's how Topps made it. That's how you opened it.
Yep.
So I mean, you could go on and on about for hours on the whole grading, and what you're hitting on is like certain people pay a premium for whether it's because it's a newer card, and they'll say, well, they didn't have the strict standards back then, and so they pay more for a newer serial number or whatever.
Label. Yeah.
And so now you open up a whole new can of worms. We could have a magazine just on that,
Yeah.
and all this stuff to me takes away from the cards. Like if I'm arguing
Yeah.
with people over the PSA label and what, we're not talking cards here, people. We're talking, grading companies. And
Yep.
it's just starting to blow my mind a little bit. Like who has the better one touch holder? I don't know. It's
Right.
getting a
And
lot of
now the talk is that comic CGS or
COMC,
the
yeah.
is now getting into baseball cards. They're into comic. They were into comics, and now there's what that would be the
Oh,
fourth
the new grading company. I'm
major.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So now they're saying, okay, well, it's like, well, how are they going to do, and this and that, and so on, and it's at the end of the day, it's a person who has, yes, some guidelines, but it's a person looking at a card
Right.
and assigning a number to it where even the best intentions are you could get a different person looking at it and give it a slightly different grade. It's not, no matter, there could be how many, and I think they said, oh, they're going to use technology with laser this and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I know. Where does it end?
It's still not going to be perfect. You're not going to get a
I use
universal,
best grading.
everyone's,
Pepino
yeah,
Man.
yeah, yeah,
You know why? Because he gives every card a 10, because every card deserves
yeah,
it. That new grading company, they must have all their people on social media touting it, because on these baseball pages, I've seen so many people saying, "Oh, this is going to be outstanding. I love the look of these. I got to get this grading. I'm going to use this grading service." And meanwhile, they're the
yeah,
ugliest motors I've ever seen in my life. Like they're really
yeah.
labels are horrific. I wouldn't want my cards in those things.
Yeah. So yeah, it's boy, there's and again, all this stuff that we've been talking. Well, not everything that we've been talking about tonight, but some of it is just the beauty of the cards and the collecting and the history and the stories and stuff like that. But you can easily get caught up in so much, and I'm guilty of it as well. I'm not pointing fingers and hey, not me. I've done it as well. I get caught up with grading at different things, and it's like, wait a minute, like you said, just it's about the card, the enjoyment of the card.
Yeah.
And I even have to take, even as we're talking here, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you know what, John, you need to take John, not you, John, need to take just a step, just, that's not important. That's just, you have to refocus and you gotta, what's important. And so I gotta,
This
yeah,
is
it's hard. You can easily get
everybody.
into, yeah,
I mean, everybody should collect the way they want to collect, and they're all into their own thing. That's fine. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. This is just, how I collect and what I think, and that's one of the reasons that the grading. I've just not been a big fan because it's like if you don't have a 10, your card is awful, right? Like if you're going to grade everything on a scale of 1 to 10, if you don't have a 10, then you don't have anything. You want everything to
yeah,
be a 10. Anything less is going to be a disappointment. And
yep,
so you can get ramped up in that, and it takes away from the card. And everybody will be like, we have all these grading reveals and everything, and we've all done them. I've done them.
yep,
I've sent
yep,
out stuff up for grading, and then you get the card back, and you'll be like, now here, well, it got this grade, and I understand because, well, if you look here, there's a little, and you scrutinize the hell out of this card. Like there's only 20 of these in the world, right?
yeah, right,
Ever and I'm going to sit here and scrutinize every little minute detail. No, I love this card. This is a rare
yep,
card. This is a Babe Ruth card. Like, do I really care what PSA slapped on there? No, but it's nice to have it in a holder to be protected.
yep,
And someday, if somebody wants to, I have to sell it.
yep,
Somebody knows they're getting an authentic thing. But that's even come into question in the recent year with the scandal on over at PSA and so forth. So you don't even know,
yeah,
like that T206 that was trimmed, and PSA graded it.
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like, I mean, it scares you.
Yeah. I have a few Boggs cards in my collection that are lower serial numbered, and they have dings. There's one in particular. It's a Wade Boggs and Tony Gwynn dual patch card. I forget what set it's from, but it's like serial numbered out of 10 or maybe even 5. And you look at it, and it's a thicker card. The corners have, are frayed a little bit. You turn it over, there's like actual some slight paper loss, like almost something got stuck or something. It's not in good condition, but you know what? There's only like, if it's out of 10, there's only like either 9 or 4 of them out there. I don't care that it's
Yeah.
not perfect, because if I did, guess what? I wouldn't own it,
Right.
because there aren't that many out there. And it's sort of like what you were saying with your card there. There's only a certain number of examples, and yeah, okay, mine may not be the best looking one, but I have it.
Yeah. It's like, I would never, I don't buy cards that have a corner ripped off, but I probably
Right,
would if
yeah,
it was the Honus Wagner. Like, I'd probably
yeah,
buy that thing, if it was just a corner and I could still see the card. That would be a rare
yep,
exception. So
yeah,
it's what, exactly what you're saying. You might have a little bit of a ding corner, but it's the only one. It's the only one. In some cases, or something like that. That's what cracks me up too. Is it's just like, it just seems like some of these grading companies, everybody's so brainwashed that they'll take an E-Tops card, right? That comes encapsulated from Tops, guaranteed to be pristine or whatever, in
yeah,
a holder, not meant to be opened, and they'll send it into PSA because they can't
yeah,
stand to have a card that's not in
yeah.
PSA.
That's not graded.
And
Yep.
then they'll have things like felt pennants, and like, if it can't be graded, they don't want it, right? Because I get people all the time. I'll be like,
Yeah,
I'll show some rare, beautiful thing, and they'll be like, "Does PSA grade those?" It's a pennant. I don't need PSA to grade everything that comes through
yeah.
my door. I have 7-Eleven cups. Do I need PSA to grade them before I can enjoy them? No, you don't. You don't. At least
I I have I probably have less than 20. I have over 5,200 different Wade Boggs cards. Of those, I probably have less than 20 of them graded. I never sent any in to be graded, and some of them were just, that's, someone had it graded, and it's a low zero. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll buy it. I don't really care that it's graded. I have a couple PSA, I have a couple, Beckett, and yeah, I don't. My Boggs collection has very, very few graded cards because I don't need them graded. And
Yeah.
quite honestly, unless you're dead set on a PSA registry, for me to go out and grade a 1988 Donruss,
Right.
I mean, what? Oh, I have a
But
graded copy in it, and it's a 9 grade. It's an 88
just,
Don. I
just,
mean,
just give the grading companies your money.
yeah, yeah. So
Graded
I mean,
versus
there's
the card.
exactly, now that again, that's an extreme example,
Yeah, but it
but
happens. When I first got back into the hobby, 6 years ago, I'm picking up, like, graded nines, 5.99. 5.99.
yeah,
You can't grade it for that.
I know.
Who are these people that send in a $3 card to get graded? I just don't get, and then sell it for less than it costs to grade it.
Yeah,
So I did. I picked up, like, some of the cards from my childhood collection that weren't in the greatest shape, and I have the sets, and I wanted to, upgrade, and I still do that over time. I'll upgrade. You go into Four Sharp Corners, you get all kind of nines. They must get a 9 on everything they submit, and you
yeah,
pick them up for $5, $7, $10. They're
yeah,
cheap.
yeah.
They must get some kind of big bulk deal to send them in, I guess. But
Well, they must. Hey, I mean, we could be talking for a few more hours here. It's over
right.
2 hours. I can't believe it. Actually, the reason why I say that is I just got a notification on my Bluetooth of, like, the battery's getting low. It was a
Yeah.
fully charged battery.
Well, it
But
took us a while to
yeah,
get going with the interruptions.
yeah. The last hour and a half went really good. But yeah, hey John, thank you so much and I'm sure this won't be the last time, and we'll get back on again and have some more good conversations. I really appreciate you coming on. This is the first time we've interacted online a little bit, messages back and forth, but first time we've actually talked face to face. Really enjoyed having you on, and hope to have you on again. And again, just thanks.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I do appreciate when you had your Hall of Fame voting there. Of I wasn't eligible this year, but that was I appreciate the thought of you saying, hey, if I was eligible, but
well, you have a close place to
yeah.
my heart. I told you, you reached out to me that time, and you asked me to look at your first video, and I remember what I commented too. I sent you back, and I said, "Man, you're a natural. Make some more." And now
Wow.
with the microphone, you sound like a radio broadcaster.
I appreciate that. I still get like nervous sometimes that it's getting better and I'm getting more comfortable. But I used to be like just
Yeah.
pretty solid and stuff like that. But now, yeah, I'll do things and I'm less worried about appearance and all that stuff. And I just talk, and so
Yeah.
I really enjoy it, and I enjoy watching your channel and your cards. It's just amazing to look at. So again,
I appreciate
thanks.
it.
Yeah.
You do a great job, and keep it up. And thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks, John. See
All
ya.
right. Bye.